Most people think death is final, that once a body is buried, the story is over. The paperwork is signed, the family grieves, and the grave is closed. But what if the person inside that coffin was never supposed to be there? And for years, nobody noticed. Not the doctors, not the police, not even the people who stood at the graveside, believing they were burying someone they loved. This is the true story of a sealed casket, a missing autopsy, and a mistake so profound that it rewrote the identity of the dead. On the morning of March 14th, a man we'll call Daniel was pronounced dead at a regional hospital. He was in his mid-40s, with no criminal history and no known enemies. The official cause of death was listed as undetermined. That alone should have raised a red flag. In cases where the cause isn't immediately clear, standard procedure requires a full forensic autopsy. But that never happened. Instead, the attending physician signed off, assuming law enforcement would handle the examination. They didn't. Within hours, police informed Daniel's family that the casket would remain sealed. No viewing, no private inspection, no questions. The explanation was vague. For safety reasons, the family, trusting the system, didn't push back. Closed casket funerals aren't rare, but they're rarely mandatory. In this case, the casket wasn't just closed by choice, it was sealed by police instruction. No autopsy photos were released. No toxicology report was shared. The death certificate was filed anyway, and Daniel was buried 3 days later. At the time, no one noticed that several sections of the burial paperwork were incomplete. No one noticed the hospital ID tag was never logged into evidence. No one noticed the chain of custody just stopped, as if the body stopped being tracked before it reached the ground. Life moved on. The grave was visited, flowers were placed, and anniversaries passed. Daniel's family never questioned the burial. Why would they? The hospital had released the body. The police had been present, and the funeral home followed protocol. Every institution agreed. The man in the ground was Daniel, except there was no proof, no autopsy, no fingerprints, no dental confirmation, just paperwork. And paperwork can be wrong. 4 years later, a separate investigation unfolded in the same county. An unidentified man was found deceased in a rural area. This time, the police followed procedure: full autopsy, fingerprints, dental records. But when they ran the man's DNA, something didn't make sense. It partially matched a family who had already buried a loved one years earlier. Daniel's family. At first, investigators suspected contamination. They ran the test again. Same result. The unidentified man in the database was biologically related to the family of someone who was supposedly already dead and buried. This raised a question nobody wanted to ask: who was actually in Daniel's grave? Exhumations are rare. They require court approval and a justification strong enough to disturb the dead. This one qualified. When the grave was opened, the casket seal was still intact. No signs of tampering. Whatever was inside had been there since the day of the funeral. The forensic team documented everything before finally opening the lid. The body inside the casket was not Daniel. The dental records, bone structure, and fingerprints all proved it. It was a different man entirely, someone with no name, no family at his funeral, no headstone. Daniel had never been buried there at all. The wrong body had been in his grave for 4 years. This case wasn't a conspiracy, it was a cascade of systemic failures. First, a hospital mislabeling. Second, a police failure to order an autopsy. And third, a funeral home's reliance on unchecked documentation. At some point, two bodies were switched, not maliciously, but carelessly. And once the paperwork aligned, no one questioned it. The investigation now had a new, urgent question. If this man was in Daniel's grave, where did Daniel's body go? Investigators traced hospital transfer logs, One entry stood out. A body labeled John Doe was released to the medical examiner on the same day Daniel died, from the same hospital, in the same time frame. That John Doe had been cremated. Daniel's remains were gone forever. The family sued, not for money, but for answers. The hospital settled quietly. The police department issued a statement. No one was fired, and no criminal charges were filed. The unidentified man from the grave was finally given a name, and Daniel was legally reclassified as misidentified at death. But the damage was permanent. This case wasn't about murder, it was about assumption, the quiet belief that systems always work, and that authority always checks itself. But once a casket is sealed, and everyone agrees not to look inside, mistakes can stay buried, sometimes for decades. The most disturbing part of this story isn't that the wrong body was buried. It's that for 4 years, no one noticed. And if one person's identity can disappear so completely after death, it makes you wonder how many others already have. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as unsettling as I did, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into cases that defy explanation.